Johnny Carson was a symbol of stability. It was comfort television at its finest, predictable, polished, and effortless. The iconic blue curtain would part, the band would play, and Johnny Carson would step into the spotlight with a calm confidence for millions of Americans tuning in night after night. The Tonight Show starring that defined an entire era of broadcasting. For 3 decades, this ritual unfolded with near-mechanical precision. Carson would deliver his monologue, exchange a few clever remarks with his sidekick, and then settle behind his desk to welcome the biggest names in entertainment. To viewers at home, it all appeared seamless, like a perfectly choreographed performance where nothing could possibly go wrong. But behind the curtain, the reality was far less controlled. Backstage, in the dimly lit corridors and green rooms, a very different story played out. Celebrities, actors, musicians, comedians, and writers waited nervously for their turn under the lights. And many of them were not entirely sober. Some had taken a drink to calm their nerves. Others had gone much further, arriving in states that ranged from mildly relaxed to deeply impaired. Carson knew it instantly. According to those who worked with him, he had an almost uncanny ability to read people. The moment a guest stepped onto the stage, he could tell if something was off. It showed in subtle ways: a slight delay in responses, unfocused eyes, overly animated gestures, or an energy that didn't quite match the room. His reaction was equally subtle: a tightening of the smile, a glance toward the crew, a quick adjustment in tone. Behind the scenes, the production team had developed an entire system to handle these unpredictable situations. It was quiet, discreet, and invisible to the audience, but highly effective. There were signals, code phrases, and contingency plans designed to keep the show running smoothly no matter what happened. If Carson adjusted his tie during an introduction, it meant the guest might not be fully sober. If he shuffled his cue cards twice, it was a signal to simplify camera angles and avoid anything too complex. These small gestures allowed the crew to adapt in real time, protecting both the show and the guest from potential embarrassment. Because in the 1970s, this wasn't an occasional issue, it was a regular occurrence. To understand why so many stars arrived in altered states, you have to understand the pressure. Appearing on The Tonight Show wasn't just another interview. It was the interview. A strong performance could transform a career overnight, while a weak, awkward appearance could linger in the public's memory for years. And unlike modern talk shows, which rely heavily on pre-interviews and scripted segments, Carson preferred spontaneity. He wanted genuine conversation. No rehearsed jokes. No pre-approved answers. Just a guest, a host, and millions of viewers watching live. For many celebrities, that was terrifying. The green room became a place where nerves collided with temptation. There was always alcohol available, top shelf, carefully selected, and rarely restricted. Officially, moderation was encouraged. Unofficially, enforcing limits on major stars was nearly impossible. Beyond alcohol, the era itself played a role. The 1970s were defined by cultural shifts, experimentation, and a far more relaxed attitude toward recreational substances. Hollywood reflected that reality. What happened at nightclubs like Studio 54 didn't stay there. It followed celebrities into every aspect of their lives, including television appearances. By the time some guests walked onto Carson's stage, they weren't just nervous. They were chemically altered in ways that would soon become very apparent. And that's where Carson's skill truly came into play. One of the most fascinating examples of this dynamic was George Carlin. Carlin was not subtle. By the early 1970s, he had fully embraced the counterculture movement. His clean-cut image had vanished, replaced by long hair, a beard, and a comedic style that challenged authority and questioned societal norms. His appearances on The Tonight Show reflected that transformation. To those behind the scenes, it was obvious that Carlin often arrived in a relaxed, chemically assisted state. But unlike many others, he remained remarkably functional. His timing was sharp. His thoughts were clear. His humor flowed effortlessly. Carson understood this immediately. Rather than trying to control or redirect him, Carson leaned into it. He would introduce a topic, ask a simple question, and then step back, allowing Carlin to launch into extended, free-flowing monologues that captivated audiences. It worked because Carlin never lost control. Yet Carson drew a quiet line. Despite Carlin's popularity and frequent appearances, he was never invited to guest host the show. The reason wasn't talent, It was reliability. Hosting required consistency, structure, and discipline over an extended period. And Carson wasn't entirely convinced Carlin could guarantee that. Still, their on-air chemistry remained undeniable. Carlin represented a rare case where substance use didn't derail a performance. It became part of the persona. If Carlin was controlled chaos, then Richard Pryor was something far more volatile. Pryor was widely regarded as one of the greatest comedians of all time. His humor was raw, personal, and deeply emotional. But behind that brilliance was a struggle with substance use that often spilled into his public appearances. On The Tonight Show, this unpredictability became both a strength and a risk. At his best, Pryor was electric, quick, fearless, and hilariously honest. But there were moments when his focus drifted, his thoughts scattered, and his energy shifted in ways that made even seasoned crew members uneasy. Carson handled him with remarkable care. He allowed Pryor to shine when things were going well, giving him space to explore his material. But the moment things began to slip, Carson would step in, redirecting the conversation, injecting humor, or smoothly transitioning to another topic. It was a delicate balancing act. Unlike hosts who might have exploited Pryor's struggles for entertainment, Carson protected him. He recognized the line between brilliance and vulnerability, and he worked tirelessly to keep Pryor on the right side of it. Not every guest could be saved, and few examples were as painful as the appearance of Truman Capote in 1980. Capote, known for his sharp wit and distinctive voice, struggled to form coherent sentences. His speech was slurred, his focus scattered, and his physical movements unsteady. This wasn't subtle. It was alarming. Carson did everything he could to salvage the segment, simplifying questions, offering prompts, and maintaining a calm demeanor. But there was only so much he could do. Behind the scenes, frustration boiled over. For Carson, this wasn't just about a difficult interview. It was about respect for the show, for the audience, and for the craft of television itself. Capote's condition crossed a line that Carson rarely tolerated. After that appearance, Capote was never invited back. It was one of the few instances where Carson's patience ran out completely. Then there were guests who didn't try to hide anything at all, such as Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong. They built their entire careers around cannabis culture. Their humor, their image, and their performances were all rooted in that identity. When they appeared on The Tonight Show, there was no pretense. Carson embraced it. Instead of masking their behavior, he turned it into part of the act. He played the straight man, asking innocent questions and feigning confusion, which only made their responses funnier. The audience understood the dynamic. Everyone was in on the joke. There was no tension, no unpredictability, just a shared understanding between host, guests, and viewers. And it worked because it was authentic. Some appearances, however, ventured into surreal territory, such as the visit from Peter Fonda in 1970. His responses became abstract, disconnected, and philosophical in ways that made little sense in a traditional talk show setting. Carson recognized the situation immediately. Rather than pushing forward, he shifted into damage control, keeping questions simple and looking for an opportunity to end the segment early. Within minutes, the interview was cut short. It was a reminder that not every guest could be guided back to safe ground. The most dangerous situations came when impairment turned into aggression, as it did with Oliver Reed in 1975. Known for his larger-than-life personality, Reed arrived visibly intoxicated. At first, it seemed manageable, but his behavior quickly escalated. He became louder, more erratic, and less predictable. At one point, his actions raised genuine concern among the crew. Carson didn't joke his way through this one. He took control, interrupting, redirecting, and ultimately ending the segment early. Safety came first. Reed was never invited back. Unlike others on this list, Sammy Davis Jr. never lost control. His appearance was energetic, almost overwhelmingly so, but still professional. His rapid speech, restless movement, and intense focus led to speculation about what might have fueled that energy. Carson handled it effortlessly. He allowed Davis to shine, guiding the conversation just enough to keep it on track. The interview felt electric rather than chaotic, proving that even when substances were involved, professionalism could still elevate a performance. Through all of these moments, Carson followed a simple philosophy. He didn't judge what guests did before they walked on stage. What mattered was what they did on stage. If they could perform, entertain, and respect the audience, he would support them. If they couldn't, he would step in or shut it down entirely. Behind the scenes, this philosophy became known informally as an impairment spectrum. Each guest fell somewhere on that scale, and Carson adjusted his approach accordingly. But there were limits. 3 rules, according to those who worked with him, were non-negotiable. Don't threaten anyone, don't disrespect the audience, and don't waste airtime. Break those rules, and you wouldn't be invited back. Looking back, these moments reveal more than just behind-the-scenes drama. They capture a unique period in television history, when cultural shifts, celebrity lifestyles, and live broadcasting collided in unpredictable ways. And at the center of it all was Johnny Carson, calm, observant, and always in control. No matter what walked out from behind that curtain, he made it look effortless. And that, more than anything, was the real performance.